Welcome to Pods with Posh and Paul, a podcast designed to inspire and challenge listeners through story, experience and insight. To face adversity, learn from suffering and discover how to embrace life with a heart filled with love and gratitude. We are so thrilled to have you journey with us and can't wait to share your stories. Join Sue O'Callaghan and Joanne Webb as we disrupt the theory that everyone has perfect lives.
Hello everyone, welcome. We are doing it a little bit different today. We are doing one of our podcasts live from Facebook, but all via Zoom as we're all in lockdown. We are so pleased to be welcoming Kath to the show. Hi Kath, how are you?
Hello, I'm great. How are you?
We're good, thanks. I'm going to do a little intro to you because Kath, you are an amazing person. You have got an amazing story. And as Sue and I, in our capacity from Impact Mental Health, we are all about resilience and you are just it. We are really pleased to be joined by Kath Koschel, who epitomises both physically and emotionally resilience, adaptability, endurance and perseverance. Kath is an ex-professional athlete who played cricket for New South Wales and was an Ironman competitor. But after a prognosis of paralysis, Kath not only taught herself to walk once, but 3 times. She never lets setbacks get in the way of her. She accepts challenges and she smashes obstacles out of her way. And it's your non-for-profit charity that lights you up, isn't it, Kath? It absolutely sets your soul on fire. And your non-profit charity is called The Kindness Factory. And it's so awesome. It's all about acts of kindness. And people go on and they log about acts of kindness. And you're in a mission to achieve 1 million acts of kindness around the world. And some of the acts of kindness are so small or so big, but they all make a difference. So welcome, Kath. We are so pleased to have you here.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's a real privilege, so thanks for having me.
So, Kath, I'm going to go straight in with a question. We are interviewing you on resilience, really, and we're obviously living in a pandemic. There's a lot going on around the world in terms of global change, technology change, teenage social media, internet overwhelm, and so on. What would you interpret resilience as? What does that mean?
Yeah, this is a question I commonly get asked, and it's a question that's not isolated to one country or one demographic of people or persons. For me, resilience isn't the lack or absence of adversity. I think understanding adversity and having been through a lot of it myself, and then hearing other stories of adversity through people or other people, I've sort of really, I guess, honed in on this fact, or I guess more so an idea that adversity is such a relative experience. So just because something seems so big to one person, it might not mean as much to another, and so forth. And so I don't think that we can ever categorize catastrophe or adversity and put it into a box as how it should or would impact us. And so therefore resilience for me is just being versatile, being able to adapt, being able to, I guess, appreciate the things that are within your control rather than things that are outside of your control, and the ones that are outside of your control, putting them, to the side or wherever they need to sit in order for you to carry on with what it is that's needed. And I think that's really as simple as resilience needs to be. Obviously it's the ability to be able to bounce back, but how we do that, I think, is a very individual process, is something that I've learned through my experiences of my own adversity, but learning from others as well.
And I think you're really spot on there in the sense that you say it's experience-based, because Joe and I always say if a 2-year-old loses their teddy bear, the stress and the trauma is exactly the same as it is for us, because they have a lack of experience in terms of building resilience in their lives. So, but is resilience something you can actually learn, or are you born with it?
No, it's definitely something that you can learn. I think sometimes we don't have to even be resilient until we need to be, if that makes sense. And so like every muscle in the body, I think resilience is something that we can work at every single day. My top 3 things for building resilience, or for me to be the most resilient person that I am, and it's going to be different for everyone else, but my top 3 things, which is a question I get asked a lot, are gratitude. So expressing gratitude and feeling it, I think, is the most important thing as well. I once saw a quote, it was a little bit funny, and it was sort of like feeling gratitude but not expressing it is almost like buying a gift for someone, wrapping it up, putting the bow on it, but not actually giving it to the person that you intended to. So gratitude is huge in my life. There was a pivotal moment when I'd hit rock bottom where gratitude, it certainly didn't save my life or anything like that, but it actually allowed me to, I guess, start a building block to the process of rebuilding what my life could look like, which is what it is today. So gratitude is my number one tip. Humor, which some people think's a bit funny, which is ironic because it's humour, would be my second tip. So there's always something that you can find that's a little bit funny, similar to there's always something that you can be grateful for. So when I hit my rock bottom moment in 2013, the first three things that I could find that I was grateful for, this is how sort of low bottom I was I had lungs, the air was free, and I had the ability to breathe. And I think there's always something we can find from a gratitude perspective. From a humour perspective, we know that when we laugh, and it's got to be that real sort of belly laugh kind of situation, we know that the oxytocin and all those sorts of things go on chemically in the brain, which is fantastic. And again, it's another building block to building that resilience. Go onto YouTube. If you haven't laughed today, if someone hasn't told you a funny story or a joke, or you haven't found a reason to laugh, go onto YouTube and find a clip. Just do it, because automatically that belly laugh will put you in a much better frame of mind to tackle whatever it is that's going on for you to have that resilience in the first place. And of course, very on trend for me, being the founder of Kindness Factory, my third tip to building resilience and practicing as much as possible is kindness. So we know that when we're in a kind state, i.e. we're giving kindness or receiving kindness, that we're in the most oxytocin state that we can be, which is the feel-good chemical that rushes through your body and makes you feel wonderful. So what I'll point out there from a resilience standpoint, if we're searching trying to find ways to be resilient, we're probably facing into a challenge. Therefore, kindness to self is probably the most important ingredient there. Whenever we get on a plane, not that we've been doing it much at the moment with COVID, but the first thing we hear in the safety briefing is put your oxygen mask on first before helping others. And there's a reason for that, and that's because we can't help others before we help ourselves, I guess. So self-kindness is important. What is it that makes you happy? What is it that gives you that thing that allows you to be the best version of yourself? It might be patting a dog, kissing a loved one, whatever it may be. It's going to look different for everyone. So kindness to self first, and then kindness to others as well. It doesn't have to cost a cent. Smiling at strangers, all those sorts of things really add up for sure.
You speak our language. We love it. We spout this stuff off all the time. And you just actually can't give the message enough, because there's never enough kindness, there's never enough gratitude, there's never enough humour. I mean, even in our darkest moments, Sue and I could be crying, the next minute we're falling off our chair laughing. And that it just makes the world go round, doesn't it? And as you say, that smile from a stranger might save your life on that day. So thank you for all of your little insights. We love it. We love it. But could you tell us a little bit about your story? Now, you decide which part, because you've been through many adversities. So maybe tell us the one where you learned the most and how you got through it.
Yeah, sure. Just to give a brief context so it makes sense for anyone who might be listening. Former professional cricketer, and I guess growing up, that's all I ever really wanted to do was to play cricket. I only lasted 4 games before my life changed in a big way. I ended up breaking my back and got the diagnosis of, clinical paralysis, wheelchair, you'll never walk again, all that kind of stuff. So that sort of landed me in rehabilitation for 12 months, whereby I tried to teach myself how to walk again, essentially, when everyone was telling me that I wouldn't. And I think it was just that grit and the grind that I had in me as an athlete from a physical standpoint that really allowed me to do that, but also a never say die kind of attitude as well. While rehab, my luck changed for the better. I ended up meeting a fellow patient. His name was Jim, a rugby player who'd injured his spine as well, playing sport. And we ended up falling in love, which is a little bit funny because who finds love in a rehab centre? I did. It was really special, and it was an amazing time. I remember about 3 months into our relationship feeling quite grateful that I actually broke my back, because if I didn't, we wouldn't have met, and henceforth I wouldn't have found that love. Unfortunately, 12 months after we were going out, Jim tragically passed away via suicide, which left me feeling quite crushed. As you can imagine, I was 24 at the time, and I'd suffered these two really big life hurdles, and it was a lot for a 24-year-old to wrap their head around. And I say this 10 years on with a bit more life experience, but still sort of looking back on that period of time, saying I really hadn't experienced much in life. And, cricket had always been the focus for me, and then I'd sort of suffer these big life events that could have changed the course, that certainly did change the course of my life, but could have been in a very downward trajectory. And I sort of neglected my mental health for about 10 months after Jim's passing. And when I say neglected, it wasn't a result of stigma by any stretch. So often I think a lot of us steer clear of that, psychological support, or, when we're in a mental ill health struggle or a mental health struggle, we often just think too much about the stigma. And it wasn't about that. It was probably more so that, again, these two life experiences were so big that I didn't really know how to articulate what it was that I was feeling. And if I started that process, and I probably had to admit to myself how badly or deeply I was struggling. And so that's what I mean by when I say I neglected my mental health. And it caught up with me 10 months after his passing, when I just had this complete emotional breakdown and hit that rock bottom moment, whereby I mentioned earlier with the me finding gratitude and all those sorts of things. And that was probably the darkest time in my life, to be honest. And I guess I always sort of say I'm very fortunate now to sort of travel the world as a motivational speaker. And I always sort of say time changed for me that day. When you have one of those days where nothing seems to go right, it could be the traffic on the way to the work, or the dishes that are piling up in the sink, or the kids that are, just crook, or whatever it is, those small moments that really bother us that probably shouldn't. I was actually praying for those moments again to matter, because after his passing and in the depths of that struggle, I just nothing seemed to make sense to me. And so that's what I mean by when I say sort of time changed. From a perspective standpoint, I was just really feeling quite lost, and that's where gratitude came into it. My favourite story of gratitude is actually I was amongst this emotional kind of breakdown period whereby I just felt completely lost, and I went to the Gold Coast in Australia to really try and find myself. It was where my partner Jim and I were supposed to spend the rest of our life together, and I was sat down at this coffee table, and it wasn't strategic by any stretch, but on the coffee table was a pen and a piece of paper. And I don't know what compelled me to do what I did next, but I'm so glad that it happened. I picked up the pen and I started writing down a list of names. And there were names of people who had ever shown up for me in my life. So family and friends, and I guess throughout that period, doctors, physios, all those sorts of specialists as well. And what I did next was I picked up my phone and I went through the process of calling every single person on that list simply to say thank you. And the response was incredible. The first person I called was my doctor. He'd obviously been through a lot with me up until that point, and he must have seen my name flash up on the screen. He picked up immediately and said, "Kath, what have you done? What have you broken? How do I help?" And I said, "No, Doc, I'm not calling for that reason. I'm simply calling to say thank you." And it was quite, I think, grateful even for me having done that. And I went through this list, and the process had sort of begun of rebuilding my life. It's so powerful, gratitude, and these days, it doesn't look like that, the expression of that for me, but I have a notepad that sits on my bedside table, and every single day it takes me less than 2 minutes. I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. And it is so powerful. It's a practice that I'll never stop doing till the day that I die. But so important, I think, for us to be thriving as individuals as well. But I can't really remember the question, Joe, but I think I've sort of got there somehow. Just interrupt if I'm rambling too much.
No, we love it. We love it. Absolutely love it. And the thing that I took from that, obviously you went on this journey. You were in rehab. Then you had this massive high because you found somebody. So all of a sudden, low, high to being right back low again, maybe lower than you've ever been before. And then over those months when you said you weren't looking after your mental health, it's within our pain. We have to break, don't we? We have to break to get better. And those months you were probably trying to avoid breaking, but you have to break to get better.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I really do, hand on my heart. I don't think as individuals, there's another person on this planet who couldn't get through the things that I have. And I think I'd really like to highlight that as well to anyone who's listening, just because, my story continues, and there's been a lot more adversity since those moments. I'm not sure if we'll get into it today, but I think sometimes a good question that I often ask a lot of my audiences when they say, there's no way that I could do what you've done, or the first response to that is no one knows what they're capable of until they have to do it, right? I've broken on several occasions, and I thought, hand on my heart at the time, that there is absolutely not a chance that I'm going to bounce back from this, but I did. And I think sometimes time is the best healer. I think the most important ingredients to understanding how we bounce back and being resilient sometimes, because it's such an individual experience, sometimes it's best to do a bit of deep exploring, not so much in the depths of the struggle, but if I was to ask any person that's listening right now, tell me your top 5 values as a person, yourselves included, Sue and Joe. Can you honestly put your hand up and say, I know what my top 5 values are?
I can.
Yeah,
amazing.
Only because we teach top 5 values quite a lot. We teach top 5 values, top 5 strengths.
Yeah.
And it's about understanding your identity and what's really important to you. And if your, number 1 is authenticity or integrity, it means standing by your values no matter what. If you want to fight for a situation of injustice, then you will stand against the crowd because you believe in authenticity, standing by your values. But I'm really interested in what you say, because I think in between the tragedy, and obviously you've been through severe tragedy in your life, broken back, loss of a dear loved one, and then in between there and the healing journey, which you talk about, those lovely tips, gratitude, and being in humour and being in kindness, there's obviously that place that's dark, and you've used words such as lost, dark, neglect, broken, and we'll have listeners on board right now that have had tragedy happen to them, or they've been abused or neglected, or they've really suffered during the pandemic. Whatever it is the cause of suffering and pain and adversity, but they're not yet in that healing stage where they can look back and say, it happened for a reason, good things always come out of it, I can see now the journey and I'm grateful for it, although I wouldn't want to go through it again. So when you're in that middle period where you are utterly lost, you're utterly broken, I think it's really useful to have some tools to hang on to. I would want to know in my period of suffering, what can I actually do? It's so bleak. I want to get up in the morning, have a sense of hope. And those 3 tools, I think, are really going to help in the sense of keep a gratitude journal and actually focus on in healing yourself so you can be kind to somebody else. But also there is a role, isn't there, for going through that middle phase and not jumping out of it, saying, well, this is the crisis, I've got to jump out of it and be a better person, I've got to be healed, I've got to see the bigger picture. There is a role in actually walking through brokenness, learning what is my identity or what are my values in it, what actually is important around me. For example, the role of compassion. How does compassion help? How do other people play out in this situation as well? I can't do it on my own. Should I ask for help? What are the role in other people being strong for me when I'm not strong, and they can encourage me, they can give me hope when I don't have hope. So in that dark period, what would you say to listeners who are not in that stage yet where they can look back and say, well, I'm grateful for it?
As hard as, because I got told this a lot, obviously time is a big healer in itself, in that every single day that you're going to go through this journey is going to be different. Some days you're going to have good days, some days you're going to have bad, where you're going to think, geez, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and I don't know how long I've got left in me and all those sorts of things. Unfortunately, it's true, or I've found it to be true. The most important thing for me, I guess, going back to even you guys having taught, top 5 values, all those sorts of things, is it's going to be a very individual process. So if you don't know what they are, take 10 minutes, half an hour today to figure out what they are. And I'll give an example as why I feel like this is so important for this period that you're talking about. My journey sort of continued after Jim's loss, and I ended up, becoming a para-triathlete, getting into Ironmans, all those sorts of things, and was on track for a big event and got hit by a drunk driver from behind and broke my back again, and the whole process of learning to walk again started for me. And I remember sitting in that hospital bed. I was in a coma for 2 weeks and woke up after that and felt, again, just very lost. How on earth has this happened again? Why am I in this situation? And that whole mentality had started to kick in. And I was hearing from a lot of people, loved ones mainly, sort of saying, you've been through this before, you can go through it again. And I was like, what if I'm just tired and the process is grueling? I've done it once and I know how hard it is. I don't know if I've got that left in me. The one sort of thing that really flipped my mindset in approaching rehab again and having to go on that journey of teaching myself how to walk was, I have done this before. What did I learn from it? I learned that I'm still a decent person regardless of my adversities and what I've been through. But I also realized that my superpower in the first time going through it was actually the people that I had around me. So their belief in me, in teaching myself how to walk again, was the one thing that actually allowed me to do that. And so then I therefore realized that I was internally and intrinsically driven by the love, support, and belief that others have always had in me. That might not be the case for any one of the listeners, but I think as a value, me recognizing that and saying, last time I was able because of this, it actually really helped the second time as well, if that's making any sense.
Yeah, it does, totally. Because I think when you go to the bottom of your pit, it's only when you have, as Joe said, reach rock bottom that you can start to climb out. But when you're at that bottom of that pit and it is really dark and you can't see the light, other people can bring a ladder down for you. So when you can't actually believe in yourself and you can't see any hope at all, it is in others, isn't it, that we can find enough courage to go on each minute of every day, not even a day at a time, but sometimes just 1 minute at a time.
Absolutely. And I think even in that, identify who that person is. Like we so often talk about, they always say it takes a village to raise a child. What about as adults? Who's your village? It doesn't have to stop when you go into adulthood. So, who are those friends that you can lean on? That it doesn't have to be 30 people. I've got, a best friend who knows everything about me, probably too much, knows more about me than I know about myself. And I would say I can count those people that I know that I can call on one hand. So it might be 4 people that I just know are my village. And if I'm struggling, I am at that bottom of the pit and I can't have that belief in myself, I know that they're going to have it for me. So again, like probably similar to the value situation, figure out who your village is. Find out who your village is that you can turn to when you need to. But maybe even on the flip side to that you know that they can call on you when needed as well. I think villages work both ways, and it's obviously a really community-orientated sort of situation. But write down who your village is. Like have it on a piece of paper. If you need to sort of revisit that, it could be a spouse. It can be anyone. Really, it could be a colleague. It could be a psychologist. It could that's completely individual as well, but I think it's really important to identify for sure.
I think these are great tips, and these are great things to do when you're not necessarily in adversity as well. These are the type of thing that anybody can do, anybody out there, because the 3 of us know adversity does not discriminate. Adversity will continue to come our way in one shape or another throughout our life. Sometimes they'll be massive, sometimes they'll be smaller, but they will keep on coming. So the more we can know ourselves, the more we can get in tune with, as you say, with our values, the people around us. If we can, as you say, write them down, have a book that you've got all of this information in. So when you are in the shit, when you are at that bottom, you can just open it and it's to be that reminder. I remember Jazz Thornton saying she went around and asked people what they thought of her, and they sent her their thoughts, and she had them written down. And she tried to take her life 14 times, but she would look at that list over and over again, and that was the one thing in the end that kept her going. So there's all these little tools and techniques that I think we should all incorporate into our life. These are the things that school should be teaching us, because these are life skills that we all need, because that pain and that adversity is just going to keep coming and slapping you in the face from time to time.
Absolutely. No, it doesn't discriminate at all. I think some of us have more than others, but we're all going to experience adversity, and sometimes it's at the most, inconvenient time in our lives as well, but it's completely outside of our control. So what we can do in the lead up is always going to be beneficial for sure.
And so, Kath, obviously now you run the Kindness Factory, and your website looks amazing. These acts of kindness, you must go on. Do you go on there every day and just look at these acts of kindness? Does it just fill your soul every day?
Yeah, I mean, again, like from a resilience standpoint, it's really hard for me to have a bad day. If there is something, I'm a person, like everyone else, I have struggles and things get me down and bills to pay and all those sorts of things. But not having to, but getting the privilege of looking through those acts every single day, it's almost hard to have that bad day when you're seeing what the world's up to and all those sorts of things. So I think you mentioned we're on a mission to achieve 1 million acts. We ticked that last year, so we're up to 2.7 million acts of kindness now, and we learned a lot through that process. And I love what you said about, you know, teaching these things in school environments, because we've now branched out and we exist in 3,000 schools in Australia via our kindness curriculum, which has been really cool too. So while it teaches the basic principles of how to be kind and all those sorts of things, we also feel like those ingredients, so there's 12 attributes of kindness, so things like gratitude and empathy and perspective and so forth. I think it really teaches a lot about resilience as well. So when we're kind, we're also resilient and so forth. So yeah, it's been an amazing journey, and one that I'm actually really proud of. So yeah, as you said though, it's an amazing charity. It's now operating in 3 countries, soon to be New Zealand, hopefully in 2023. So yeah, watch this space, NZ.
Exciting.
So for listeners that don't understand what that means, I've had a quick look at your website, and I picked out my favourite, which is being sent a cocktail kit in lockdown, and there's a lovely picture of the cocktail and all the bits that go with it to make cocktails. There's somebody that paid for petrol in a petrol station when somebody next to them didn't have their credit card. People send chocolate in the post. There's some beautiful little statements on there, aren't there? Could you give us an example of some of your favourites?
Yeah, I mean, I'll preface this by saying we've got a hashtag, it's one small act, and I guess it really alludes to this notion of nothing is too small ever, and sometimes the smallest thing can create the biggest change. Some of my favourites was, one of the ones that I actually did was, or received, I guess, was more on a zebra crossing, or a, you know, is that what you call them in New Zealand? You know, the crossings with the stripes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I was on one of them, and an older woman was walking past, and she smiled at me, and so that made me smile because it's quite contagious, obviously. And she stopped me in the middle of this sort of crossing, and she said, "I just want to let you know you've got a really beautiful smile." And I was like, the joy that gave me, her just telling me that, and the fact that we exchanged smiles actually was incredible for me. And that's why when I say sometimes all it takes is a smile, is I genuinely mean it. It was euphoric. I was incredible. I was on cloud 9 for the rest of the day, all those sorts of things. So really small ones like that. I had a 5-year-old boy once, well, his mum actually called and contacted me, and they logged on the website and all that kind of stuff. He's in the grocery checkout line, and this was, you know, obviously pre-COVID, and an elderly woman was trying to pay for her groceries, so tapping the credit card, all that kind of stuff, and it kept declining. And the little boy didn't really understand. His name was Sam. He didn't understand what was going on, so he taps his mum's arm, and he says, "Mum, like, what's going on?" And she's trying to explain to a 5-year-old how credit cards work and all that kind of stuff, and he's thinking on it. He waits a minute, he taps his mum's arm again, and he says, "Look, Mum, can I have my pocket money?" And she said, "Well, what do you want your pocket money for?" And he said, I'll pay for the lady's groceries if she can't."
Wow.
And his mum almost was like, how is it that my 5-year-old son has just taught me more about life and kindness than I have actually taught him? And so she got her credit card out, paid for the groceries, and the story was beautiful. They sort of exchanged, and she told her all about the kindness factory and all that kind of stuff. And I think those moments where kids are almost teaching their parents how to be kind, and all these wonderful life lessons are incredible as well. We've had actually 3 people, separate obviously, donate kidneys on our platform, which has been phenomenal. So 3 lives have been saved, you know, blood donations, all that kind of stuff. They're some of the most special. I was giving a keynote presentation in the US, and a woman ran out halfway through. It's obviously an emotional story, and she rang me 6 months later to say, "Look, I was in your event. I don't know if you can remember," all that kind of stuff. I just wanted to let you know I guess I learned about perspective, and I rushed to the hospital. She hadn't spoken to her dad in 10 years. They had a falling out, but she knew that he needed a kidney in order to survive. She got tested. It was a match, donated a kidney, and they've got now a really great relationship. So obviously saved his life as well as got their relationship back on track. So, I mean, kindness has endless opportunity, I think. We never really understand the true impact of kindness. It's so hard to measure how broad and how big the scope can be when we engage with it. And I think kindness also inspires kindness. So when we see another giving kindness, we innately, I think, want to be kind ourselves. So encourage anyone listening to sort of get amongst that as much as possible, not even having to log it on our website. It's not even about that. I think just for yourself, for others, you might change the life or even save the life of a person that you haven't even met yet, just through that kind of flow-on effect or ripple effect of kindness, for sure.
I agree, because you're right, kindness doesn't just necessarily affect the person doing it and the person receiving it. It affects a lot of people. Just the story you were telling me about the young boy who I've got a 16-year-old daughter, and just before our lockdown, we were watching my son play sport. We went to the dairy, and I think I had $10, so she went in and bought something, and we've not got heaps of money, so she comes out and she said, "Oh, Mum," that man couldn't afford his stuff, and she had $5 to buy a pie at the pie shop, and she said, "Do you mind if I go and give this money to that man?" I said, "No, not at all." And she went and she tapped on his window and she said, "Hi." She said, "How much did you need?" He said, "Oh, only a couple of dollars." She said, "Well, you can have this." And like his little boy started crying because he could get the lollies that he wanted. Then they went into the shop owner, told the shop owner. And so it wasn't, and then I obviously went and told some friends and I put it on my Facebook page. So it just, this one small act probably impacted like 10, 15 people. And it was, you're right, anybody can do it. And it has this knock-on effect. And if we want the world to be a better place, and surely that's where we start, is with kindness, isn't it?
And I think also, if you go back to your own area of suffering and struggle, you remember the people that were there for you and made an act of kindness. And it is often the tiniest and smallest of things. It is a smile when you're crossing the road, isn't it? Or it was somebody that when they were packing your bags at the supermarket checkout, was just really kind to you in a moment where you thought you were going to break. It just gives you the strength to carry on. So the message isn't, it doesn't have to be big at all, does it?
Not at all. No grand gestures, but but endless possibility for sure.
Kath, where are you going with your life now? Because obviously you travel the world normally doing your keynote talks, but we've been in lockdown. You've been in New South Wales. You're back there. What's in it? What are you doing now? What's your next goal? What's your next dream? What next obstacle are you going to smash down and achieve?
COVID sort of forced me back home. I'm an Australian originally, so I had been traveling the world, as you mentioned, and living in various parts of the world, which was really exciting and all those sorts of things. But I feel really grateful to have had this opportunity to be around family and loved ones again during this lockdown period and things like that. So that's been great. As I mentioned, we've sort of launched a kindness curriculum last year. It's now in 3,000 Australian schools, and we're in a pilot phase in the US with that at the moment. So that's been wonderful, and that's our next sort of rollout, as well as then the UK, where we're a registered charity as well. So when I say, it sounds like kindness global, kind of domination, but I think it's the best kind of world domination that we could have is this influx of kindness. So for me, I think I had to get quite this whole million acts of kindness thing come very accidentally to me. I was in that hospital bed after that car hit me, and essentially I'd been giving out a lot of kindness. The movement was born prior to that experience, and I guess people recognised that I was in a coma and could no longer engage or give out the kindness that I had been. And so therefore I woke up to hundreds of thousands. It was quite public and it's on the news and things like that. And so all these people started writing me messages and emails and inbox things on social media and stuff saying, "Look, sorry to hear about your accident. Wanted to let you know that because of you today, I mowed my neighbour's lawn, or I donated blood, or I tied my sister's shoelace." And so that's how the movement was sort of born, where I just flipped the website to be more about the world and others and contributing to the movement rather than myself. And very accidentally, ended up logging, we're now at 2.7, I think I mentioned, acts of kindness from all around the world. And the curriculum is more so, what were the learnings that we took from that? And I wanted it to become something that I guess we weren't going to see the results behaviourally overnight. And so therefore, what was the smartest thing that I could do? And that's why, hence, we're in the school environments, whereby we can get in front of as many children as possible at as young an age as possible, so that we can build kindness throughout the curriculum, and so that kids are sort of brought up on this foundation of kindness. If they're not experiencing it in any of their outside environments for whatever reason, it could be adversity or broken homes and all those sorts of things, then school's going to be a really positive and powerful tool for our kids to be in those kind of environments. When we talk about mental health, I don't think we can ever have a conversation about a struggle or adversity unless we feel safe enough to be able to have that conversation. And I think what Kindness Factory or the curriculum's role plays in that is creating safe enough and kind enough environments for us to have conversations of depth that have all the things that we know are so important to thriving, like empathy and compassion and gratitude and perspective and so forth. And so I guess it's a generational change that we're after now. We're going to sort of see results of this curriculum in, maybe 5, 10, 15 years time. But, we're in it for the long haul, not, again, overnight success and all those sorts of things. So, yeah, I think as well, I guess my secret mission has almost become, and I know you guys will really believe in this, I'd love to actually hear your thoughts, but redefining what kindness is. So often we sort of see it as this warm and fluffy and nice thing. I don't think kindness and niceness have to go hand in hand. I think they can, definitely. They should, it's nice to be nice, but kindness to me is actually the ultimate strength. Sometimes kindness isn't just, it can be disguised, I think. And sometimes kindness is the ability to have a hard conversation with a person that they're not going to like to hear it, but that it's the best thing that you can do for them because it's what they need to hear in order to grow or to heal or to move forward. And I think that's become my secret, or, it's a bit of a cheeky mission that I have, in that it's the ultimate leadership strength, in my opinion. And I'd actually love to hear you. I know this was supposed to be the other way, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Hey, listen, Kath, I think we could talk to you all day, all night. You've got so much to say, and we're on the same page with so many things. We're coming to a time where we're going to have to limit the questions, but I've just got one last question for you, which is, you talked at the very beginning about neglecting your mental health. You've talked about then the adversity, the dark period coming through it, the healing. What can you do every day? Because the message I'm sure you're giving in schools through acts of kindness is you don't need to wait until you break or something major happens. How can teenagers, young people, parents nowadays actually look after their mental health on a day-to-day basis, so that with lockdown, with the additional pressures, with loss of jobs, with not socialising, going to nightclubs, kids travelling the world, things they do at that age, how can they survive by doing little acts every day to actually look after themselves so that they don't see a crash in that mental health?
Yeah, I think on top of the things that I've already, uncovered in kindness, gratitude, humour, control the controllables. I think, and it's so hard to do. So, hats off to anyone that can do it in these situations. I'm struggling with it daily, still being in Australia and all those sorts of things. So often, life it's going to throw us curveballs. COVID being one of the most paramount and hard situations that any of us have faced in a long period of time. There are so many things that are outside of our control, and I think if we can put them to the side, as much as they are impacting us, and only control or think about the things that are within our control that we can change. So ultimately, I guess, every single day we wake up with a choice as to how we want to respond to things and how we want to behave as people and individuals. And I think controlling those things and staying focused on those things is going to allow us or help us to get through this situation. Here in Australia, we've been in a hard lockdown now for, I think it's close to 10 or 12 weeks or something. And it's so easy to think about the things that I can't do. I can't go out and see my friends and socialise and hug people and do all the things that naturally, I guess, give me that resilience. So rather than saying, it's a real shame that I can't do that anymore, I sort of go, what are the things that I can do? I know that I can get out every single day for an hour of exercise, and that's really important to me. So I'm going to go and do that. I know that while I'm physically disconnected from people and I might not be able to give them a cuddle or whatever it is that I like doing, I can FaceTime. So I'm going to do that. And so coming up with little strategies, I think, that are within our control, allow the situation to become something that I guess is much more manageable, if that makes sense. But that would be, probably my final tip in this entire similar, like it's, and you can do this, like adapt it to any challenge. When I got told I'd never walk again, what are the things I could control? I could control my attitude. So I'm going to show up to rehab every day and I'm going to try my best. And that's in my control. I know what 100% looks like. No one else does. But I'm not going to worry about the things that everyone's telling me that I can't do. So, I think that would be my number one tip.
I think that's an awesome tip, and I think it's one that everybody can actually do as well. So it's when things are really relatable and can easily be implemented in people's lives, they're the greatest tips that we can possibly give. So thanks so much for that. And going back to kindness, I totally agree with what you've said. Kindness is one of my values. I filter everything through kindness, even the hard conversations. Am I doing this in a nice way? So couldn't agree with you more. But Kath, thank you so much for being with us today. You have faced some serious hard adversity. You've got through it. You have now left a legacy you've got a legacy here and now with the Kindness Factory. You've got a legacy to Jim, and good on you, and well done for doing what you've done. And we're so thrilled to hear about the kindness in schools in the US and coming up, and we can't wait to have the Kindness Factory here in New Zealand as well. So thank you so much for all that you do and all that you inspire.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being with us today. For us to inspire others to live their magnificently imperfect life, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or on your podcast app. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Pods with Posh and Pool. We can't wait for you to join us on our next episode. Love, light and peace.